Hello, and welcome to the 2017 Volunteer Information Webinar. My name is Adriana Camarda. I'm with the Chicago Department of Family and Support Services, and we're here today to discuss volunteering for the 2017 point-in-time count. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for even viewing this webinar. If you're thinking about volunteering, we would like to cover in this webinar a little bit about what volunteering means and why we do the point-in-time count. Hopefully we will answer most of your questions during this webinar. If not, there is also a question and answer document on the website that you found this link to, as well as you can always email your question to homelesscount@cityofchicago.org. Let's get started right away. What is a point-in-time homeless count? It is literally a snapshot of homelessness in Chicago. It gives us a few bits of information that we here at DFSS, as well as all the homeless providers in the city of Chicago, use to determine what our homeless population looks like and how we can address their needs. It literally freezes in time homelessness, meaning exactly how many individuals and families we have in shelter on that night, as well as how many we see and count on the street. It doesn't take into account how many enter into homelessness that day or exit homelessness that day. It's really just a snapshot of what the population looks like, and we get a little bit more information that we can go into now. The point of the homeless count is basically to demonstrate to HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as Congress, on what Chicago's need for funding is. It captures data such as demographics, the causes of homelessness, and what the barriers are to housing for our homeless population. It's a benchmark that ensures whether Chicago's plan on homelessness is actually meeting its goal or whether homelessness is increasing in the city limits. Like I said earlier, it determines the number and the need of Chicago's most vulnerable population on any one given night. All of the data that we collect on demographics and causes and barriers is rolled up into one report that is issued to Congress every year by the Housing and Urban Development. So sample demographics that we collect would be basically age, race, and gender, which are very important to us to determine who is, what are the age ranges and what are the genders and populations that we're serving. The survey instrument also gives us some causes of their homelessness, whether it be they lost their housing or they were kicked out of housing. And then again, it gives us some barriers for them to maintain housing, such as disability, lack of income, or substance use. The point-in-time count for 2017 is scheduled to take place on Thursday evening on January 26th between the hours of 8 p.m. through 2 a.m. Now, one of the reasons why we elect to have it in January is because it's mandated by HUD. In fact, it has to be during the last 10 days of January, and one of the purposes of this is because it's easier to count someone in shelter than it is out on the street. Therefore, it being the coldest time of the year in Chicago, those that will opt to take shelter will, and we can count them in shelter, but we still canvass the streets looking for unsheltered individuals and families. This particular window of time is mandated across the country, and the reason also for that is that we can be compared to any other sort of city across the nation to compare how our homelessness compares to theirs. One other question that arises about volunteering for the homeless count is, do I have to be there for the entire time? And we'll get into a little bit as to why, but yes, you need to report to your site at 8 p.m. and generally most teams are out until 2 a.m. So unfortunately, if you can only stay till 10 p.m. or you can only arrive at 10 p.m., that you won't be able to participate because we really do need volunteers to be there through the whole duration, and I'll get into a little bit further why. Right here is the data that was collected during the 2016 count, and as you can see, the City of Chicago has been conducting homeless counts for over a decade now, and this is our trend data. The gray bars demonstrate how many people were in shelter during our point-in-time count, and the blue bars or darkish gray bars are the street count. We are mandated by HUD to do a shelter count every year, but HUD only mandates that we do a street count every other year in the odd number years. However, Chicago has decided that it's such vital information that we now, since 2013, have been doing a street count every year. You'll see in last year's count that we had a reduced number of individuals and families in shelter, 4,646. These are in shelter all over the city, whether they be funded by DFSS, whether they're funded by HUD, or whether they're privately funded shelters. So included in that number will also be agencies or small shelters that shelter the homeless but do not receive any city or federal money. We also counted 1,243 individuals and families on the street that night. That includes a sample of abandoned buildings, that includes CTA trains, and as well as parks and open areas. How did we collect that data? Now we'll get into a little bit overview of how we conduct the PIT. It is conducted by dividing the city into geographical areas, approximately 9. We use those individual areas as meetup points for all of the volunteers. You will meet there, which will hopefully be close to where you live or where you need to be after the point in time count. And you will be dispatched from there and returned from there in your team. The other partners that are also working on the night of the count are, we have specialized teams that are dispatched by the city to cover some of the hot spots. A hot spot is where we would expect to encounter more than one individual, probably a group of individuals or an encampment. DFSS and its partners will be conducting counts in places such as that. So encampments under Lower Wacker and encampments maybe perhaps under the viaduct will be conducted by hotspot teams. But also that night, we have the Chicago Police Department who is helping us conduct counts in abandoned buildings. We have the Chicago Housing Authority conducting counts. The CTA is instrumental to us, and the Park District that will be counting homeless individuals in parks. Some other sister agencies are the Office of Emergency Management, as well as other city departments that are assisting us in conduct the count. But unfortunately, even with all of those that help, we cannot do it without you. That night, we are actually recruiting approximately over 350 individuals such as yourself to be able to conduct the count thoroughly. So you are an integral part of how we conduct the point-in-time count in the city of Chicago. And again, we would like to thank you for even viewing this webinar and thinking about registering for the count. Here on the screen are a shout out to some of the other homeless providers and the sister agencies, as well as the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, that help us conduct the point-in-time count in January. What does the lead agency do? Well, the lead agency, like I said, is your access point where you will meet up. They actually open up their doors, allow volunteers to come in. They will generate assignments of teams, and they will also train you on data collection, how to fill out the tally, how to fill out the survey, and give you some points of references on how to approach the homeless, as well as some safety tips. They are also your nearby point of contact, meaning if any issues arise during the evening, you call into your lead agency site, and they should be able to assist you as well. Every form that you go out with that night will also have a city department phone number with operators standing by that you can call, so that if you do not have the number of your lead agency, you are not left out in the cold, literally. You can call the command center at 10 South Kedzie, and there will be people there to help you. Here is an example of last year's tally. The tally is basically what you will do to count individuals that you cannot approach. You'll get more extensive training on the night of the count, but I just wanted to show you some of the forms that we use for the point-in-time count. You'll notice the red arrow at the top. All of the tallies are numbered like checks, and the reason being is we assign your team a certain number of forms that must be returned when you get back from your count activities. So another thing to point out is that the tally only indicates things that you could determine by observation, meaning gender, age, race, ethnicity, and location and time. So they're not very extensive, but that will give us a head count of how many individuals are seen but not approached during the night of the count. The next item that you will be asked to complete on the night of the count is the survey. The survey is approximately 4 pages and takes about 15 minutes to complete. They'll only be surveying people that you can approach and that you can ask questions. Just to give you a rough estimate, we really only collect about 300 surveys on the street during the night of the count, but they are really, really important to us and vital because that is where we get most of the information on the characteristics, the causes of homelessness, as well as the individual barriers of homelessness. You'll notice on the red arrow pointing to the number that these surveys are numbered as well, so that we log what your team left with and how many you'll be returning that night. This helps us with data quality to ensure us that we collect, it ensures that we collect all of the surveys that were distributed that night. Just to give you also an idea, you won't be able to see the survey in this presentation, but you will be trained extensively on it. Some of the things that helps us to determine is whether you're a veteran, whether you're a senior or pregnant and parenting youth or an unaccompanied youth, whether you have a disability, whether you've suffered violence, domestic violence, whether you have mental health issues, if you're living with HIV, and your incarceration. Some of the questions that we've added for the 2017 point-in-time count are based on education and work income. Every year we review the survey document to ensure that we really are asking questions that we need in order to assess what our population looks like and what services they need. But keeping in mind that we couldn't literally ask every question that we wanted to because you, of course, are standing out there implementing the survey, and it takes about already 15 to 20 minutes to conduct with one individual. Another item that you'll receive on the night of the count to help you will be the handbook, the updated 2017 handbook when it's available. The handbook literally goes through every question as well as gives you tips on how to identify a homeless person or what to do in a situation with a homeless person. The handbook has been very successful, so you don't have to call into your lead agency or call into the city. It gives you some it's an instruction manual, if you will, if you had a question about one of the questions on the survey and missed it in the training. Here's another snapshot of the handbook that also tells you when you should use the tally and when you should use the survey and whether you should use both or not both. Again, if you've missed this in the training that you receive on the night of the count, or there's a disagreement between you and your team members, the handbook is really gives you some pointed information, but you could always call either your lead agency or us at 10 South Kids. Some of the useful things that you could use for the count, the city will provide the hotspot teams and all of the lead agencies with some of the things that you see there. Of course, the forms and the volunteer books, but we will also probably give you some pencils. We'll give you your assigned area map, and we'll also give you hats and gloves to distribute, as well as an information card that you can pass out to homeless individuals if they ask for certain information. Some good things to bring with you, and we'll get into a little bit too about it. If you have a car or a car that's available for the night of the count, that will help us in coverage. Like I said, there's about 100 teams that go out on the night of the count, and the city's fleet is not sufficient to be able to do that. Further, citizens cannot drive the city cars without assuming liability, or the city assuming liability. So we ask that if you have a car available for your team, that you consider using your car. Another good thing to have with you is a fully charged cell phone. When I started doing these point-in-time counts, not everybody had a cell phone. Now it seems like not everybody does not have a cell phone. So if you have one, it'd be good to bring with you. You can either use it for GPS purposes, or you could use it for contact, of course, and you can also use it as a mini flashlight. If you want to bring a mini flashlight to help you fill out the forms, because it will be dark, that would be helpful. If you have a clipboard available, you can also bring that. That helps doing the surveys out on the streets. And I cannot stress enough to bring warm clothing and extra hats or gloves if it's snowing. Typically, we get some volunteers who just come in a fleece jacket, and I've got to tell you that that's not enough, even if you run a little hot. It's best to bring warm clothing. You'll be standing outside in the elements for at least 20 minutes at a time to conduct just one survey, so you should really bring warm clothing. Where do you go? What you see here are all of the lead agency and the sites that they have made available for the Night of the Count. When you register to be a volunteer, you will be asked to select what your first choice is so that you can select one that either close to your work or home. But keep in mind that you'll be leaving these areas at around 1:30, 2 a.m., if not later. So it should probably be a site that you can get home from. And then these sites will also be made available when you register as well. Probably the week before the count, you will also receive confirmation of your site choice. But most individuals or most volunteers do receive their first choice. Very rarely do we have to divert people to other areas. Another thing to keep in mind, registration will be open as of December 1st. You can go to the DFSS website and there's a link to where you can register. If you cannot find it, or if you forget that it doesn't open until December 1st, you can just send an email to homelesscount@cityofchicago.org, and I will help you navigate the DFSS website. Some of the things that the training on the Night of the Count will cover is your personal safety training on how to conduct the count, some prevention strategies on safety when you receive your team assignment. If you don't already know the members of your team, we will provide you or assign you to a team. Get to know them. Carry a cell phone with you the night of the count, and discuss some safety planning strategies as well as your roles before you leave the lead agency site. In other words, determine whose car you're going to be using, who will be doing the surveys, or if you're going to share the survey responsibility, and what strategy you're going to use to search your particular assigned area. You will also be receiving a map that night of a designated area that you cannot cross boundaries of. So you'll get a very small area of the city that you'll have to canvass. You may want to strategize about how to cover that area before you get into the car. Some intervention strategies that will be discussed on the Night of the Count are know your limits and trust your assessment. And do not forget that whenever the emergency arises, that 911 is available to you. If something happens, we stress that your safety should always come first, but if the situation calls for it, please call 911. Some of the best practices we found on the Night of the Count for the teams is to familiarize yourself with the survey. It is very long, but going through it on the Night of the Count and maybe doing a practice run before your team leaves is a good idea. We always ask that you introduce yourself to the homeless individual or someone that you've approached on the street and let them know what you're doing. There is a script on the top of every survey. However, we do ask that you introduce yourself and let them know what you're doing, and that usually helps break allows you to communicate and get the survey completed. You also need to obtain consent to administer the survey. If someone is sleeping, we ask that you don't wake them up because that would probably arise to a situation that you're not going to get a completed survey. But if they are awake, again, introduce yourself and get consent to administer the survey. Express confidence and compassion. That would be, it'll come across to the homeless individual that you are there in peace and that you're just looking for some information, and it'll help the situation. When surveying individuals within a group, prioritize your safety and survey participant privacy. When you're surveying an individual or your team member is surveying an individual, the team shouldn't break up. You should always stay together, and then always be cognizant of the participant's privacy that you're actually doing the survey on. So maybe your group should be standing a couple paces away, but should be able to be there should anything happen. Okay, and know your expectations and know your community resources. If anyone is asking for shelter on the night of the count, the information that you'll receive or what the protocol will be is that they should always go to the nearest police station or emergency room to be picked up. Although homeless individuals being picked up on the night of the street will be slower than usual because of the HOP teams will be helping with the point-in-time count, those are the places where they should go if they would like to be picked up and taken to shelter. So you should know where the closest police station is or know where the emergency rooms are in your catchment area, that map that you were given. And you should also know where some of the 24-hour establishments are that you can search. Let's review some do's and don'ts. These do's and don'ts will be repeated on the night of the count, but just to give you an indication of what is expected of you and what is not expected of you. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't ask that you wake anyone up. That's usually not a good way to start asking a person if they want to be interviewed. So we ask if you find somebody that is sleeping or doesn't want to be disturbed that you just put them on the tally and move on. We ask that you only approach if you feel comfortable. In other words, if you see a group that outnumbers you, you should probably call into the lead site or the 10 South Kenzie Command Center and let them know that you found an encampment and that a HOP team will be dispatched to cover that area if it wasn't already on our hotspot list. Please don't mandate participation. If you get someone who does not want to participate but you are chasing them down, asking them the questions, that is not a positive experience for either one of you. Again, if you start an interview and that person during the mid-interview becomes either angry or doesn't want to participate any longer, just go ahead and thank them for their time, and there are questions that you could ask based on observation. And any information on the survey is better than none, so that will still be accepted. Please do not invade personal space. We have homeless individuals under viaducts or in encampments that they feel that those places are their homes. Please ask to approach and be invited and do not invade their personal space. Please don't cross barriers. Every year we get volunteers that are very, very excited to be there and think that they can climb a fence or climb a barrier because they know that there's homeless people on the other side of that barrier. However, the night of the count, you will be signing a liability waiver, so any injury that happens to you is your responsibility. So we ask that you don't cross any barriers, any fences, any concrete blocks to go and count in homeless individuals. If you can see them, that is for the tally. You mark them down and move on. If you cannot see them, then they're not there and you can't count anybody. Do not promise anything that can't be delivered. Don't promise them a ride in your car. Don't promise them a ride in your team member's car. Don't promise them that they can receive services someplace if they just go down the street. Those are usually not things that help the situation on the night of the count. You are really just there to either take their survey or tell them and give them information that you're passing out. Do not be judgmental. Some of our clients on the street maybe haven't had access to a clean shower or a meal in quite some time, and so they may not be in the best condition. Don't give out money or food on the night of the count. We are not distributing food for the homeless or giving them any sort of bus pass or money. That sets up a safety issue for you and your team. Like I mentioned earlier, don't offer any rides. You are not to put anybody in a car and ride them over to a shelter. That is not what the evening is about. Plus, it presents some safety issues for your team. Do not deviate from the survey. As I mentioned, the survey is already 4 pages long. Asking questions that are not on the survey just makes that longer, and there's really nowhere to collect that information either. Please don't panic. If, again, you encounter a situation where the homeless individual becomes angry or you feel like you're in danger, you can stop the survey or the tallying at any point and just retreat. And please don't put anyone in danger. Please do things in a team. Do not separate or do not do anything. Leave maybe one of your team members interviewing a person and go back into the car that's around the corner where you cannot see your team member. Anything like that. These are all strategies that will be discussed again on the night of the count and gone over thoroughly. Some of the things that you should do, again, is ask a person to participate if you think they're homeless. You should introduce yourself and explain what you are doing. Most homeless individuals, if they've been in a drop-in center or a homeless shelter in the earlier part of the week, already know that the point-in-time count will be happening that week, and they may already know what you're doing. Also, the police department is informed of the point-in-time count, so we have police officers on heightened alert all over the city as well. Please be sincere and caring when you approach. Please remain calm and try to de-escalate any situation that happens, or use your de-escalation skills to retreat. You should know all of your emergency numbers. That should be the lead agency number before you leave the site. You have those city phone numbers on all of the forms that are distributed that night, as well as 911. You should know to keep your appropriate distance so that respects personal space, but you can still interview a person. You should honor requests. If a person requests 2 hats that you may be giving away from their lead agency, that is fine. But again, please don't distribute food or money. You should refer to people to shelters. So you should know where the closest police station or the closest emergency room is in relation to your area, so that you can guide them to being picked up. However, you should, again, please don't put them in your car and ride them over there. You should dress appropriately. Please wear your warm clothing, but don't show up to the site all bundled up, because remember, you'll be sitting in a training for at least an hour. And my experience is that night of the count is everybody is peeling themselves off during the training because they came bundled up. Just bring those items with you, but remember that you're going to be indoors probably until about 9:30 or 10 o'clock when you're dispatched. And then another thing is carry your ID with you, but please leave all of the valuables at home. Again, as I said, registration for volunteering will begin December 1st. You can find the link on the DFSS website. What you'll also find on the website is the frequently asked questions. And if that doesn't answer your question, you can always contact me at homelesscount@cityofchicago.org, which is a lot easier to spell than my name. I recognize that. And there is my phone number if you would like to call the old-fashioned way as well. Okay? I would like to thank you for participating in this webinar. I know the information was sort of thrown at you quickly, but again, this is just to give you a brief overview of what the point-in-time count is and how you will be helping us as a volunteer. Again, if you have questions, you can always email me at homelesscount@cityofchicago.org or at 312-746-6685. Thank you.